How we doing, everybody? It's your guy Wardy here, and we're back at it, breaking down the latest in Mets land, as we have plenty of topics to deep dive and get into in this one on latest reporting, as well as what's happening with the Mets in general over the past 24 to 48 hours, and our Big Mets Update segment, that being September 9th, 2025. And I just got back last night from attending that game in Philadelphia in which the Mets sadly faltered 1-0 in a very frustrating fashion, where the offense simply did not show up for a third consecutive ball game. If you want to see my initial reaction and analysis as I was live exiting the ballpark in Philadelphia yesterday, make sure to check out our post-game live show here on the platform after you guys watch this video. Or if you guys want to see a recap version of just 2 to 3 minutes, head over to the Bleacher Report app, type Mets, and then you will come across my thumbnails, which is me there, as I break down again over 2 to 3 minutes a recap of the Mets' latest wins and losses there throughout the course of the 162 with our great friends there at Bleacher Report. But today, guys, we're going to get into not only Noah McLean and what was still his worst start yet as a Met, you could argue, but even at his worst, he still is the best option for this Mets team. And in a very Jacob deGrom-esque fashion, the Mets had no offense to show, while Noah McLean certainly kept them in the ball game. We're going to expand more on McLean on how well he's fared so far this season. From there, we're going to get into a Mets starter that looks like he's officially done for the regular season, that being in Tyler Megill. We're going to get into the latest news on Megill. It certainly is not a positive one, as Tyler has been working heavily to return back to this Mets team in his rehab outings over the past calendar month. From there, we're going to get into Frankie Montas. That is officially official. His season is over, as we know, but his 2026 season is over as well. We're going to expand more on that, along with Luis Torrens, who has just been placed on the injured list by this Mets team. Just how much of a negative impact is that for this club right now? Well, how well he was swinging the bat. And now that Alvarez is back, we're relying on Alvarez to be somewhat of that guy again that he was leading up to his injury. And folks, he looks like simply a shell of himself. Can't say I'm overly surprised, but yes, it is most certainly a problem at the time of us talking right now. And to wrap up the show, we're going to talk about the Mets outfield configuration. They trade away Drew Gilbert. Now Drew Gilbert looks like he is the best piece of the puzzle for a Giants team pushing for that final wildcard spot. How can we compare and contrast how Cedric Mullins has done? Well, Jose Siri returning to this Mets team in comparison to a guy like Drew Gilbert, who wasn't going to get the opportunity with the Mets, but maybe, just maybe, they should have done that in hindsight. A lot of things to break down in this one, everybody, so sit back, relax, and get yourself ready for the ride, which is our latest Big Mets Update segment. All I ask is that you hit that like and subscribe on your way in, as it's a fantastic way to support the channel, and thank you so much for doing exactly that. Help us get to 35,000 subscribers, because we are giving away a jersey to one lucky subscriber of whatever player you currently want on the Mets, and all you got to do is hit those buttons and join our live stream a week from the point of us hitting 35,000. Don't worry, I'll keep you guys updated in our content and make sure that no one misses out on that for the most part. And shout out to our amazing sponsors at SeatGeek that have you covered for all of your ticketing needs. Make sure to check out our great friends there by utilizing our promo code WARDY10. That way you too get 10% off your next ticket purchase, as well as Mumu, the official trading platform of the New York Mets, but we will get into them later on in today's show. But first and foremost, let's begin with what you guys see beside me, and that is Noah McLean, looking pretty darn good against the Philadelphia Phillies. And might I add, I say this knowing that when I was in attendance, the first 3 innings, I was saying to myself, oh my God, McLean just keeps getting hit. And this was a concern I had to a degree heading into this matchup, mainly because this was Noah McLean's second time facing the Phillies this season in just a 2-week span. 2 weeks ago, he carved them up across 6 if not 7 dominant innings there that we saw at Citi Field. Fast forward 2 weeks later, and while he wasn't as dominant as he was last time around, he still held his own and kept the Mets most certainly in this ball game. It wasn't for a lack of effort by Noah McLean's end, Gregory Soto's end, Ryan Helsley's end. I'm the only man I feel like on this planet that's attended all 3 good outings by Ryan Helsley this season. I was there for all of his best outings, from the debut against the Giants, in which the Mets sadly lost, to the 13-3 victory against the Phillies, to then the 1-0 loss yesterday. The commonality in all those 3 games is Ryan Helsley looking good, surprisingly. So I don't know what it is about me, but I'm the good luck charm there. To what we saw then, not just in Ryan Helsley, but also Brooks Raley, who was fantastic in a 1-2-3 inning there, carving up and shutting down in just 1 pitch each, and guys like Kyle Schwarber and Mr. that being and Bryce Harper in a 1 pitch, 1 out at bats. Needless to say, the Mets pitching most certainly did their job that we saw over the past last 24 hours, but the offense was nowhere to be seen. So let's talk about what has been so vital about Noah McLean this season, because if there's any positive to take away from McLean being a part of a 1-0 loss and him getting his first loss of his career, is that if he's getting Jacob deGrom treatment, if you guys don't know, deGrom during his time with the Mets did not get run support more often than not, then it's clear as day that this man is obviously our ace. And I only say that half jokingly, is when we really expand more on Noah McLean and just how good he's been this season, this man has been no slouch. Not only has he been brilliant against the Philadelphia Phillies this year, but he's been brilliant all in all this season. Just listen to the following numbers, everybody. One, Noah McLean is just one of 2 pitchers to start their career with 5 starts of at least 5 strikeouts and fewer than 3 runs scored. The only other starter to do so was Mr. Fernando Venezuela, and that is some great company, if you ask me. Outside of that, Valenzuela, I should say, not Venezuela. Close, potato, but not the same exact thing. As we expand from there, though, everybody, what we saw McLean do now, just insane numbers. Let me relay the following here because I have them on my phone, actually, because there's one in particular I definitely want you guys to be in on the know of in case you guys don't know. And now, collectively, for Noah McLean in his first 5 career starts, after going 5 innings of 1 earned run, 7 hit, 3 walk baseball against the Phillies in that batter's box, he now has a total of 31.2 innings pitched this season, 20 hits allowed, just a measly 5 earned runs, 10 walks, 33 strikeouts, and a 1.42 ERA. Kind of good if you ask me. It's almost like Noah McLean is here to stay. And I got to give a quick shout out to my brother Richie. He knows exactly who he is. Can't thank him enough. As a birthday present for myself, he has decided to gift me a Noah McLean jersey. So I'm awaiting for that to be received on my end. I'm very excited for that. McLean is under club control until his age 30 season or so. So he has 6 years of club control. So barring changes with his inconsistencies with health and what the Mets do with their front office moving forward on making decisions, I hope that McLean is going to be here for the long haul. You know, I think the Mets finally have a young blossoming core with their pitching staff and himself, Jonathan, Brandon Sproat, Christian Scott next season as well, along with many others in the farm nipping at the heels to make their major league debut sooner rather than later, that we are going to see some homegrown talent hopefully stay here for the long haul in this rotation. Noah McLean looks like he is the best piece of the puzzle as of now, so I'm very excited to have that in my possession. Cannot wait. But McLean now this season, everybody, again, has just dominated the Phillies in 2 separate outings. This is not one. This has been now twice that we've seen McLean go out and carve up these Philly batters like they are literally nothing. He's allowed just 1 earned run across, I believe, 13 or so innings, if not 14, that he's pitched against the Phillies so far this year. So he has been doing his job and then some are close to. But I definitely want to know your thoughts in the comments down below. How impressed have you been with Noah McLean so far this season? I understand your counter is going to be McLean pitching great means nothing when the Mets offense is nothing to show. I wholeheartedly agree. That goes without saying. But we're not here to talk about the offense as much as we're here to talk about solely the pitching. When you think about a 3-week sample size of Jonathan, yes, he did allow 4 earned runs, but it was on just 3 hits. They were all hit out of the ballpark, sadly, and he still gave you 6 strong innings. Brandon Sproat in his major league debut goes 5 hitless innings in Cincy in a batter's park against a Reds team pushing for playoffs, and he doesn't allow a couple runs until the 6th inning, his final inning of work, and he's outdueled by one of the best pitchers in baseball right now in Hunter Green. Nothing to scoff at there. Sproat was more than feasible. I thought he was really good, all things considered, for his major league debut. And then Noah McLean here to allow just 1 earned run. You know, it's an absolute shame that you see 3 Mets top pitching prospects all thriving for the most part in the rotation, back to back to back. 8 total earned runs given over those 3-game stretch, which is less than 3 runs per game. More than feasible for a Mets team. They could just be competent with their bats. But going back to how I said we're not here to talk about the offense, well, now we are here to talk about it because, unfortunately, the bats have been the exact reason as to why the Mets have dropped their past 3 games. Say what you will about Carlos Mendoza's boneheaded decision-making when it comes to taking out guys when they shouldn't be taken out. Like, I did not like Brett Beatty being pulled for a Starling Marte just to pop out in the infield. Even though I understood the righty-lefty matchup, I still didn't care. Cedric Mullins, he traded for him for one reason only, and that is to hopefully at least thrive and gets left-hand pitching, which he's been dominant against all year long. Yet, when facing a lefty, instead, Carlos Mendoza decides to pinch hit for Cedric Mullins there. I know Mullins has not hit a lick this year, and we're going to get into why that's a big problem for this offense right now when looking at the outfield configuration, but Carlos Mendoza is doing literally little to nothing in his power to set Cedric Mullins up to have greater success than what he's otherwise had this year, and obviously it's been at a mute point because he's been on, I think, 0 for his last 26 skid or so. Hitting-wise for this Mets team, it's gone from bad to worse, and we are all missing, one could rightfully say right now, and I say this knowing that's probably just just over a week or two sample size of Drew Gilbert. But I will get into Drew Gilbert, what I miss about him, most certainly why I'm not mad about that trade in hindsight, but why it's one that maybe the Mets should have never done looking back, and we'll get into those reasons as to why that is. No, I'm not going to sit here and say I don't like Tyler Rogers, because I love Rogers. I really have appreciated what he's done for this Mets team, but I knew that the Mets gave up multiple assets in that deal that I still liked at the time. I still like it now. You just have to wonder, looking back, was that the right move for this organization, knowing how much they've been in dire need of a jolt for this offense? And I'm going to expand all about that here in just the next couple minutes, because before I do, everybody, we talk about the Mets offense, and that has sadly been their Achilles heel after it's been dominant for them for a month and a half straight. The Mets have led Major League Baseball in basically every single offensive statistic since the beginning of August, from runners in scoring position to runs per game to hits per game, you name it, they have been stud-worthy in that category. But over the past 72 hours, nothing to show, and you simply cannot allow these stretches to continue if you're trying to secure postseason play. When you have the Giants, when you have the Reds, when you have the Cardinals, when you have all these teams currently nipping on the heels of the Mets right now to secure that final wildcard spot. As we know, the Giants are 3 games out, the Reds are officially 4 games out, the Diamondbacks are 4.5 out, and the Cardinals are 4.5 out. So guys, let's go on from talking about what's happening with the Mets' young pitchers and McLean, Sproat, and Ton to their offense, to now getting into a bit on the notice in regards to, yes, Mr. Tyler Megill, because as you guys can see right here along with me, and we're going to pair this with the Torrens injury as well here in just a second, everybody, but let's just start with the following, because it is unfortunately not the news that I was hoping to break down each and every one of you today, but we have to talk about it because the Mets have lost another arm. Now, say what you will about Tyler Megill's value to the organization this season. Obviously, that's been very up and down. He started the year strong, but in a very Tyler Megill fashion, the flame burned out sooner than you would have otherwise hoped it would. You know, a guy that's nothing more than a 5-and-dive starter for you, very Clay Holmes-esque, has some nasty stuff when he's right. When he's touching velo, when Megill's going 95 plus on the gun consistently, you're destined for a good outing from him. But when he's below on the velo, it's not good. And between the lack of consistency in his velocity and the lack of consistency in his health, nothing about Tyler Megill has really fared well as of late. And just to take it a step further, mind you, 2 days ago, he had himself his worst rehab outing yet of 2-inning baseball, allowing 4 hits, 5 earned runs, 2 walks, 3 strikeouts. You know, that prompted the Mets to see if there's anything wrong with him, and unfortunately there is. As Anthony Tacoma reports here, the Mets have shut down Tyler Megill as of the past day due to tightness in his arm. He's getting an MRI that would certainly put the rest of his season in jeopardy. I mean, it goes without saying, Tyler Megill being shut down probably means the season's over right now. It's hard to envision that Tyler Megill's going to return this team with just 18 or so, if not 17 games left this season now. If he returns, awesome. Okay, then we'll see what he can provide. But I'm going to go with the assumption, based on what's been reported right now, that Megill's year has come to an end. And I'm sure we will find out official word from Carlos Mendoza and or David Stearns later on today once we find out the imaging, once you hear Mendy speak pregame. It'll probably happen shortly after this video first drops. So just know that this is going to probably seamlessly go in hand with whatever we're going to hear the MRI results to be. If it's nothing too terrible, then great. Then he's going to be shut down. Then he's going to ramp back up, but it's going to be hard for him to still return this year. If that doesn't happen, and they do find a significant injury, then again, goes without saying that he most certainly is not going to pitch again this year. I think the only question we have right now is Tyler Megill a guy that's going to be shut down, where he's not even going to be an arm that they consider should they crack postseason play? Is he shut down entirely? I'd imagine it's going to be the latter, unfortunately, which is unfortunate not only for Tyler Megill, as the guy just cannot stay healthy, and we want him to, because you can never have enough pitching depth. You know, say what you will about the inconsistencies that Megill has had in this organization, and I completely understand the frustrations with plenty of them, but the Mets have been in dire need of depth. After losing guys like Griffin Canning, who was a key focal point the first half of their season there that we saw, to that Achilles rupture, as well as all the other injuries that have plagued this team, with the inconsistencies to Sean Manaea continued as he's waiting to have surgery. And it wouldn't shock me if he gets shut down, maybe after he gets rocked by the Phillies in today's game. I hope it doesn't happen. I pray he carves up Philadelphia. But if he doesn't, and he looks bad again, I'm going to go on a limb and say he's probably not going to get too many more turns in the order before the Mets say, okay, let's put him on the injured list. Let's do something here, because we just can't throw him out there anymore every 4th or 5th day. It just isn't working. But to go from Sean Manaea to also Frankie Montas, as we have a key report to get into on his front, as you guys are actually going to see here in a second as well, Montas has been horrendous, you know, and he was another guy that the Mets were banking on heading into the season. When you think of all the pitchers the Mets were banking on that they acquired heading into the season, all of them have flopped in the sense of either having season-ending injuries or they just haven't worked out. The one exception is Clay Holmes, but Clay has really been more of a 5-and-dive starter. So while he's been solid, he's been good in a smaller sample size, not giving you the length that you need from a starter typically in your rotation. This is the nature of the beast when you stretch a reliever to a starter for the first time since his 2018 year with the Pittsburgh Pirates. So now to go on from what we've seen Tyler Megill, again, I'm wishing him the best and speedy recovery, whatever the status is going to be that they find out or maybe don't see there in his MRI. I just hope that he heals up and can be impactful again at some point, but it appears that this season is more than likely now not going to happen. That really hurts this Mets team in the interim when looking at, say, piggyback situations. I thought that Megill could come in and be what Paul Blackburn simply couldn't be. Another arm to bear in mind that the Mets are banking on to get something out of this year, and they got literally jack you-know-what out of it. Nothing, squat whatsoever. He is Ponska. Nothing to be happy about with that acquisition since David Stern's trade for him at last year's trade deadline. But the point here is that the way that Paul Blackburn was trying to kind of be that six-man starter / swingman is the way that the Mets, I'm sure to a degree, were hoping Tyler Megill could be. Well, after losing Megill now, the Mets now lose another arm that could eat multiple innings for you. So when you look at how they go about things down the stretch this year, this really is, again, going to be on a start-by-start basis. And if you do have starters that, say, get shelled and go no later than 3, 4, tops 5 innings, you do have to wonder, who will the Mets consider in piggyback situations? Is there a world where they move Clay Holmes out of the rotation this year and move him into a full piggyback situation where he comes in, say, starting the 3rd, 4th, or 5th inning for a couple innings? Anything I think is on the table for this Mets team at this point, because their rotation has continued to be a problem. While the kids have been good and have kept them in it, their veterans most certainly have not. And that has mounted after David Peterson yet again did not have himself that quality of an outing. Yes, he wasn't as bad as his previous one, allowing two innings of 8 earned run ball. But when the bar is that low, naturally you have yourself a problem there. So the Mets need to figure out things. They need to figure them out fast, as obviously this season is dwindling as we speak. And speaking of injuries, everybody, Luis Torrens there, he is going on the injured list. He officially went on the injured list. I just pinned this yesterday when I was en route to the Mets game in Philadelphia, and I saw that news right before I got to the ballpark. I was like, you gotta be kidding me, man. I was pissed. The only upside I saw initially was that Alec Boehm and Trey Turner were getting put on the injured list for the Phillies around the same time, but that clearly meant nothing because the Mets did nothing with their bats in game 1, and that 1-0 loss. Torrens, though, this is brutal because Luis Torrens has literally been one of the most important bats in the Mets lineup when he's been in the lineup since Alvarez went down with injury. He's had an over 1,000 OPS. He has been raking in the absence of Alvarez. He's hit 2 home runs over a week or so span. He was mightily vital, including that big 13-3 victory over the Phillies north of 2 weeks ago. Torrens was right in the thick of it when it came to the offensive upside. He had a big bomb opposite field, if I'm not mistaken. He just looked great, all things considered. So now that you lose Torrens to the 10-day injured list, retroactive to September 7th, so he's not going to be out too long-term here. Hayden Senger gets the immediate call that we saw with the Mets yesterday. I don't mind Senger. He's a really good game caller, and he honestly has had some sneaky hits when you don't expect them to. So I have very little qualms in regards to Senger, but just a matter of fact that Alvarez is not him yet, right? And we don't know if Alvarez is going to ever be him for the remainder of the season, because this is the risk the Mets took and allowing Alvarez to not get season-ending surgery on his thumb, play through it, and now that broken left pinky, he's a dog. I love Alvarez, and I love the utmost effort he's putting in to stay with this team. But I would be lying to you if I didn't say verbatim, as soon as McLean struck out against Duran yesterday, to my buddy Jonah that's a Phillies fan, I said, and I quote, "It's game over. Congratulations on the win. Alvarez is going to go down like no problem. He is going to be so outmatched here, it's not even funny." And lo and behold, Alvarez struck out on 3 pitchers or so, all down and away, nothing close to the zone. Why? Because Alvarez is still too inexperienced. That is a pressure cooker situation for someone like him who just returned from injury, trying to play hero. All he needed was a single, but that was too much to ask for against Duran, whose stuff is just too disgusting for a guy like Alvarez to handle just coming back from injury. And we know that Alvarez has been blown away at times that we've seen by high velocity, high leverage arms. And Duran was a prime example of exactly that. The Mets have beat up on Duran multiple times already this year. They were this close to finally having a rally in the 9th inning. Instead, they are now 0 for 60 after trailing entering the 9th inning after a failed attempt in the 8th inning or innings prior. Alvarez, we saw, have some big moments for the Mets in his stretch of returning from his latest minor league assignment, not because of injury, just because of inconsistencies. and then for a month and a half span went on to bat right around 300 with over 1,000 OPS. Alvarez was one of the most lethal bats in this Mets lineup leading up to his unfortunate thumb injury. But now that he's dealing with again, that partially torn UCL, that sprain, that's going to need surgery at the end of the year that he has a splint on right now, as well as that broken left pinky on his hand. You know, Alvarez can go out there and play as much as he wants, but if he's performing at, say, a 70% rate of what he otherwise was doing, then he really provides little value to this team as of now. Now, I will not go too heavy on Alvarez for the sake of saying he's only been up here for a couple games since returning from his injury. I understand the short-term reaction. We're in a playoff race right now. We can't see guys be as incompetent as he was with his at-bats, but my counter is that Alvarez, when right, is far and away the best catching option this Mets team has. He is better than Torrens, and he most certainly is better than Singer, but that is when everything is clicking the way that it most certainly was for a month span leading up to his unfortunate injury. That is why when I told you guys when Alvarez first went down, I'll be shocked if he returns at all similar to how he was initially performing, because we've also seen Alvy have a lot of slow rolls when returning from injuries in the past, and this seems to be no different as of now, just a couple games sample sized in. But, you know, between Torrens going down when he was red hot, Tyrone Taylor, who is finally starting to pick things up with the bat, went down on retroactive with a hamstring injury as well. It just feels like this has been the story of the Mets season. Every time that they finally have started to get something in flow going, something clicking, whether it's between guys returning from health, then another one goes down. I always say it as a joke, but it kind of holds true. It's a soul for a soul, if you will, right? And the same time that we see the Mets bring in a starter, they lose a starter. The same time that they bring in a catcher, they lose a catcher. It just, nothing is ever in unison with this club, and I think that's a great example of what has been wrong for them in the course of the 162. But now that Torrens is out for at least the next week or so, the Mets are going to be heavily relying on Alvarez to be that guy, and I think this sample size is going to be very telling to see if Alvarez can be that guy for this team, or if he's going to be one that we're going to kind of want riding the pine more often than not once Torrens is back, because he just doesn't have it now due to his injury. So we will wait and see more on the Alvarez front, but I definitely want to know your thoughts about that in the comments down below, everybody, because as we continue our conversation here, and Cedric Mullins has been putrid. This is before I think he went 0 for 26. He struck out, had a couple runners on base against the Phillies I saw in person yesterday. Just horrendous. Mullins has not been good, and we're going to talk about the pros and cons between adding Mullins and trading Gilbert, to Siri coming back, and everything in between here in just a minute. Before we get to that, however, I did want to get to this, everybody, and that was the following injury. And that is Frankie Montas, official from John Heyman. Frankie Montas' elbow surgery is today, expected to miss 2026. So there we go, everybody. Frankie Montas gets $34.5 or so million by posting a just under 7-year array and a handful of starts for the Mets, and that's that. Montas will probably never pitch for the Mets again. He will rehab in the organization all next year. He'll be making his millions without a problem, regardless on how much the Mets have insured him. I'm not exactly sure there. What I do know is that he's still going to be getting a pretty penny to do nothing. And the Mets don't hate the idea of Montas rehabbing the organization, but they hate the idea of that with him opting into his contract. And that's obviously what's going to happen now. So the Mets are going to have Montas on the shelf all of 2026, and then we will circle back at the end of 2026 in that offseason, depending on what's happening, obviously, because after that season, we're going to have the big CBA to worry about, and who knows if we have a big lockout. It appears we're going to have something along those lines again, barring changes. But then we'll worry about Frankie Montas heading into 2027 spring training. We'll talk about how horrendous he was this time 2 years ago, but maybe he will have turned the corner now that he's fully healthy and rehabbing the organization for a year. Anything's possible. I don't hate the idea of a pitcher rehabbing the organization all year and the Mets having their hands on him and getting the best out of him to fine-tune his arsenal and work on his health among things, but we're going to have to see it to believe it. Frankie Montas, without a doubt, the worst acquisition that David Stearns has made at this point as a Mets president, which is kind of saying something, because if we're being frank, Stearns has missed on plenty on the pitching front. More often than not, he has completely missed, as a matter of fact. And while I love David Stearns, I really appreciate a lot of the things he's brought to this organization, especially from the mentality the Mets have had front office-wise with their player development and their scouting. It's been brilliant, night and day from what it was a couple years ago. Still, though, they have a lot of work to do, and David has a lot of work to do in what has been a growing pain-filled year as year number 2 as Mets president of baseball operations. But now to go on from what we have there in Frankie Montas, let's get into a topic that I really want to expand on that has everything to do with the Mets outfield configuration, because we have some key news to get into this one as to what the Mets are planning to do moving forward between guys like Cedric Mullins, Tyrone Taylor, Jose Siri, and how this goes in hand with Drew Gilbert and that trade for Tyler Rogers around a month or so ago. But before we do that, everybody, let's just hear a quick word from our amazing sponsor that you guys know plenty, that being at Mumu, the official trading platform of the New York Mets. Folks, Have you been seeing that big orange bowl that's making Mondays at Citi Field way more exciting? I'm talking about our amazing sponsor on the platform at Mumu. As the #1 Mets channel on YouTube, I absolutely love to break down stats, analysis, really getting into the nitty-gritty numbers, and that is why I love so much Mumu, because they do exactly that with that same analytical approach when it comes to investing. It's a trading platform with professional grade tools and premium research that other companies usually charge a pretty hefty price for, all come for free when you sign up as a customer with Mumu. But folks, that's just the tip of the iceberg. And thanks to Mumu's partnership with our beloved New York Metropolitans, all Mumu customers can get free tickets to any and every Mets home game on a Monday throughout the course of the season. That's right, folks. Free baseball all season long for the greatest fan base in sports. Not to mention Mumu Millions. If the Mets pull off 100 wins this season, one lucky Mumu customer is going to come out winning $1 million. And what's nuts about this is that Mumu has already given away $10,000 when the Mets hit first 25 wins this season, as well as $20,000 when they hit the 50-win mark. And when the Mets inevitably hit 75 wins, they're giving away $30,000. But as much as they love baseball, Mumu's #1 priority is jump-starting your investing journey, which is why they're giving the WardyNYM community up to $1,000 in NVIDIA stock just for making a qualified deposit and becoming a Mumu customer. So folks, what are you waiting for? Head to start.mumu.com/Wardy, scan the QR code, or click the link in the description to join the Mumu community. Now, let's get back to our Mets. Alrighty, folks, and one final thing to mention with our great friends at Mumu, as a further thank you so much to everybody that's been going out of their way to check out our amazing sponsor. If you guys email me with my email that I have linked down below here in the description of our video, proof that you had signed up with our great friends at Mumu and had began a deposit, please let me know, because I will then enter you guys in a raffle, a small raffle that I'm going to be doing for a Mets-related giveaway in the near future. It'll be a Mets merch-related giveaway. That'll be separate from the one that we do when we give away a jersey every 1,000 subscriber milestone on the platform, just as a further thank you to everybody, and obviously to incentivize you guys, because I love Mumu. Really do appreciate them being a part of the platform here as not only any sponsor, but a platform that I use, one, for trading, and two, are officially partnered with the New York Mets. So they work seamlessly here with what we do on the platform. So again, guys, check out Mumu, link down below, deposit today, and send your guy Tyler Ward here, Wardy, an email at drawtw7@protonmail.com. That again will be linked down below for you guys to check out in case you guys are wondering. I might have had the letters mixed up, but just look at it down below in the description. I got my email for you. Email me proof that you had signed up and put a deposit down, and I will enter you guys in a raffle that we will announce the winner of a week from the time I was talking right now. So as we continue on now, guys, let's get on to, last but not least, the following. You see this? This is Drew Gilbert. We know Drew Gilbert. We know he's always had this moxie. He did this going back in college. Didn't see this too much in Syracuse, but we knew that he always kind of had this kind of personality. Well, folks, Drew Gilbert is a sicko, and I'm not going to lie, I envy the hell out of the fact that this Giants team is getting that kind of energy right now. This is crazy. I know. Kind of nuts, kind of kinky, whatever the hell you want to call it, but it's happening. So let's talk about why I envy Drew Gilbert and that moxie. I envy it not just because of his performance right now. Drew has just under a 250 batting average with like a 740, 750 OPS. Very inflated numbers. He raked in bad series against the Colorado Rockies and the Baltimore Orioles. I do not expect Drew Gilbert to be soaring with the bat all season long, but let me just say a couple things here that I like to make clear, because I know there are some people that are going to probably watch this and say, oh, great, here's Wardy backtracking, just trying to fit the narrative. No, I'm not. I love the Tyler Rogers trade then. I still love it now. I like Tyler Rogers a lot. I've always wanted him as a New York Met. He's one of my favorite relievers in baseball that wasn't a Met for all these years. I want him re-signed ASAP as soon as the season is done. I will stand on that, no problem. I have no issue that Jose Butto has a 3-year rate for the Giants. The Mets were closer to DFAing Jose Butto than he was staying in this bullpen. And in case you think I'm lying, it's a fact. That's why they threw him in this trade like it was literally nothing when he had multiple years of control. Why? Because he has no minor league options left. And given no minor league options left, the Mets obviously like the idea of a Butto who's going to be utilized in nothing more than low leverage post-trade deadline, even though that we didn't know how bad Helsley was going to be, for example. But that was the initial thought process, which is what warranted the trade further. Blade Tidwell has been injured, unfortunately, for AAA for the Giants, if not mistaken, so he's a bit of an afterthought. But Drew Gilbert is the interesting one, because while he has performed offensively the past 2 weeks for the Giants, helping them to now get 3 games behind the Mets, the vibes I'm seeing here is far more than just the performance on the field. It's clearly the dugout and it's the clubhouse vibes. He's fun, he's electric, he's a psycho, he's all over the place, and he gives me such an eerily similar impression to a Harrison Bader when Bader's really at his most extroverted. Not as extroverted as this, but when he's at his most extroverted. And that could bode really well for a team that's trying to find vibes and aura momentum down the stretch heading into postseason play. I'm a firm believer that Drew Gilbert has been a clear factor into why the Giants have had the success that they've had over the past 2.5, 3 weeks now. This was a Giants team that sold at the deadline, technically, by trading away Mike Yastrzemski to then make room for Drew Gilbert, and Drew Gilbert has been paying off in more ways than one for that Giants team. And the reason why I mention all this is because hindsight's 2020. You know, it is what it is. We can look back and say shoulda, coulda, woulda, and that's what we're going to do right now, but that's the extent of it. We understand why the trade happened then. I understood it then. For those that didn't understand why the Mets trade Drew Gilbert, it's because he didn't have a clear lane for this team right now. You had Tyrone Taylor and Jose Siri. Even though Siri had the setback at the time, he was still working his way back, and we're going to get into him in just a second. But between the Mets' current options in the outfield and center, even with how bad Tyrone has been, Drew Gilbert had a red-hot final month leading up to his trade there for AAA Syracuse, but he's also a guy that the Mets have been very suspect in his defensive upside. And that's something that David Stearns has had a heavy proponent on, making sure that you have defensive quality in the outfield. Now, it's kind of ironic as we say that, considering Cedric Mullins, while he has range, he has such a noodle arm defensively in center that has been a liability. It has hurt the Mets on numerous occasions trying to get a throw in there close to home. Not in time, because again, Cedric has the worst arm in the Mets outfield far away. He makes Brandon Nimmo look like Yoenis Cespedes with a cannon. That's how low the bar is we're talking. Whereas Drew Gilbert, yes, his defensive range isn't great. He's been playing center field for the Giants. He has right around, not even a 50 OAA, which is outs above average. He's a below league average defender, no doubt. But Drew Gilbert has 90th percentile arm strength, and that alone would be paying off big time for this Mets team if they had him in center, getting some reps now and playing some time with Tyrone Taylor. So looking back on that trade, I think we can all agree Cedric Mullins has completely flopped. We're a month or so into this, and I know it's a lot of pressure on him. We're not telling him to be the guy. He just needs to be a guy. And outside of stealing bases, Cedric Mullins has literally been a mute point for this Mets team. There's been no positives with him, and we haven't utilized him well either. There's been numerous opportunities to utilize him in lefty-lefty matchups, yet we've chose not to, which completely goes against the notion as to why you trade for him. I think that's piss poor decision making by Carlos Mendoza, and it makes it look even worse for David Stearns, who, while he gave away little to nothing for Mullins, was clearly adding Mullins to be our go-to center fielder option on a daily basis. And now it feels like we can barely play the guy at the time of us talking right now. Drew Gilbert, hindsight 2020 thing, he would have been more of a defensive liability, but if the Mets decide not to trade for Cedric Mullins and not trade for an outfielder at all and gave Drew the keys, who knows what would have happened, right? And maybe he would have been even worse offensively than Cedric Mullins, and that's okay. But I think the point is that the vibe and the aura alone, that I think is something that could have positively impacted this Mets team, this clubhouse that clearly has fluctuated a bit in the vibes this year. They have a very tight-knit group. Juan Soto's been very adamant on how great this team is together. Lindor, same thing. They love Starling Marte. He's kind of their unsung captain. If it isn't Lindor, among others. Those things are great and all, but we haven't seen that with the on-field product this year. The way that we've seen a team like the Giants now actually have something to rally around, which has basically been Drew Gilbert. He's basically their cheerleader right now. And the same way that Jose Iglesias, while he performed great, but it was his personality that really is what carried the momentum for the team in a lot of ways last year too. That never say die mentality that he brought was great. It just feels like every time the Mets have had an opportunity to try to fill that void of not having the vibes going, they just continue to fall flat on their feet. Jesse Winker, Jose Siri, two guys the Mets were hoping to be impactful in that regard. But now that Jesse Winker is officially done for the year, more than likely, you have to wonder, is he going to be able to stay around the team or not? Because if he can, that's a big bummer. Because he's a guy that you love in your clubhouse and the locker room at minimum, because you know how much of a great vibes guy he is. Jose Siri, this is where things get interesting because Siri is basically ready to return to this Mets team. He's had multiple rehab games in AAA, and yes, he's been striking out a good rate, but that's what you get in Jose Siri. He's going to swing and miss a lot, but he's going to be a human highlight reel when it comes to his defense and his base running. Siri, I think, is the last hope for this Mets team to get the vibes and the aura out of their center field option. Because Tyrone Taylor, we know TT does his thing, but he also can't hit a beach ball for 2 months when he chooses not to. So you don't know what you're getting in him. When you get Jose Siri, yes, you don't know what you're getting at all in his hitting, but Jose Siri will basically score a run every single time he gets on base because he's that much of an electric factory with his base running. He is Luis Angel Acuna, but on steroids. Not actually steroids, but steroids in the sense of like even more amplified with the base running. Acuna is great. Siri is just as good, if not better. His defense in center is amongst the best in literal baseball. He entered the season with the Mets in the 99th percentile or so, and now it's above average, and absurd arm strength. Siri can throw out a guy from third playing deep in right field where Juan Soto would be without a problem. That is how much of a cannon Jose Siri has. So Siri has a lot of qualities and obviously talks a lot of smack, has the aura, in a lot of ways is a guy that can kind of fill that Harrison Bader hole that the Mets left this past offseason that they initially were trying to fill with Siri before he went down with injury yet again. So I think we have yet to see the best potentially from the vibes going from the Mets outfield configuration right now. But as a hindsight thing, I think we can all agree, yes, if the Mets stuck with Drew Gilbert, it probably wouldn't have hurt them all that much in the end because what has Cedric Mullins done to positively impact you? Little to nothing to this point. Outside of a couple stolen bases that led to some runs scored, he has had little to no clutch hits whatsoever. He just hasn't had anything going that should have you instilled with confidence as a Mets fan that, oh, we should feel good with Cedric Mullins at the plate, let alone playing defense. If Siri can't hit, at least we know he's going to be a human highlight reel on the base pass and with his defensive game. Even Mullins isn't as good as him in either of those regards. So for all those reasons, knowing that once Siri returns, he very well could be getting more playing time than Cedric Mullins and or Tyrone Taylor, it just further proves the point that that Mullins trade probably should have never happened looking back. But again, shoulda, coulda, woulda, just something to bear in mind moving forward. And no, I'm not upset that Drew Gilbert is not a New York Met. And the reason why is Carson Bench is expected to impact this Mets team as soon as the next season. I wouldn't be opposed to the Mets considering down the stretch here just if desperate times called for desperate measures. Why the heck not at this point? If he could provide you a jolt, maybe we'll get some Conforto 2015 vibes where he just hit some bombs in the dance if we get all the way there somehow. What I will say is that Carson Bench's potential is through the roof. Mets love him. The organization loves him. The fans love him. I love him. And Carson Bench really feels like he's going to be the outfielder that Mets fans were initially hoping that a Drew Gilbert could be for this Mets team, but much better. So I'm very bullish on what Bench can do for this organization. That's why I wasn't overly upset when we initially traded Drew. It was just kind of a shock that they give up as much assets as they did for Tyler Rogers as a rental initially. But again, it's one of those things where even when the Mets gave up all those assets, Rogers has still been the most valuable player out of all of them. Rogers has been a more impactful player for the Mets than you could argue than what Jose Butto has been. Gilbert, you could argue, has been more impactful on the offensive side naturally, but let's bear in mind that Gilbert's vibes, the aura, how much of a maniac he is in the clubhouse, I think is what's carrying that vibe and that positivity for this Giant team more than anything. So it's a fascinating one to look back on. Wishing Drew the best. Nothing personal. I just hope that he stops this because I really need the Giants to stop winning baseball games so the Mets can stay somewhat comfortably afloat, even though nothing's comfortable about them in their current standing right now and the wild card. But guys and gals, that is all I have for you. So again, thank you all so much for watching. Let me know all your thoughts about the following topics in this Big Mets update segment that we broke down, from Noah McLean to Tyler Megill to Luis Torrens to Drew Gilbert to Frankie Montas to Cedric Mullins to Jose Siri and everything else in between. Let me know also in regards to once Jose Siri returns, what would you like the Mets outfield configuration to be in center field? Do you want them to go with Jeff McNeil and get more center field reps because we're just in that dire need for something of stability there? That might be the route you go down as well, for being honest, just to close this one out, because seriously, McNeil has been great for the most part this season. He can handle center more than fine. Just got to make sure he stays healthy. If you maximize the lineup by having McNeil in center, having Beatty at second, and having Vientos at third with Marte at DH, I don't hate that, as long as it's what's best for this offense to get in a groove. 3 days in a row, they haven't shown up. They got to show up now before it's too late for them this season. Thank you guys again for watching. Let me know all your thoughts again down below. This is your guy, Wardy, signing out. Let's go, Mets. Peace out, everybody.